I want to thank you all for coming out, taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Terrence Amen, founder and CEO of 3UFIRST. I'm also the author of Black Unity, the total solution to financial independence and happiness. So why did you come here tonight? Well, hopefully you came to hear me explain how we can solve the major problems in our community using the same money we're already spending. But before I get into that, I'd like to ask you a few questions. By a show of hands, how many of you love yourselves? Okay, that's unanimous. Now, by a show of hands, how many of you love your families? All right. Now, how many of you love your community? All right. So, if we love ourselves, and we love our families, and we love our communities, why are we spending $1 trillion of our hard-earned money every single year in every community but our own? Why are we doing that? Well, let me give you some facts. We are literally contributing to the lack of wealth within our community when we do that. But doesn't that sound familiar? Well, 400 years ago, everything our ancestors produced was used to create jobs, build wealth, business and investment opportunities, and fund the best programs across the country. But for who? It wasn't for our ancestors, right? They were slaves. So let me give you some more facts. 400 years later, 90 to 99% of that $1 trillion is still used to create jobs, build wealth, business and investment opportunities, and fund the best programs across the country. But again, for who? It's not us. We're spending that money outside our community. So, let me understand this. We've been following a 400-year plan that our ancestors had no choice to do because they were slaves, yet we still do today, and we're supposed to be free. Does that make sense? I don't think so. So, I'm going to see who I'm working with here. By a show of hands, how many of y'all agree with this 400-year plan we've been following that hasn't worked and never will work? Well, brothers and sisters, this is what 3UFIRST was created to do. 3UFIRST was created to solve our own problems using the money we're already spending. So we're going to go and start with creating jobs. So why do we need to create jobs in our community? Well, for one, in the past 60 years, our unemployment rate has been double that in the white community. Past 60 years. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is, for the past 60 years, we haven't done anything significant to solve that problem. That's what that means. Next, the wealth gap. From 1970 to 2013, black men and women have never, let me repeat that, black men and women have never been paid the same as white men. Never been paid the same as white men. The highest it's ever been is 80%. 80%. So what does that mean? Well, hopefully that means that we need to be looking within our community for work as opposed to outside of it. Hopefully that's what that means. Unless you want to continue to be paid less than your white counterpart for doing the same job. Next. Our former incarcerated brothers and sisters can't find work because their record continues to follow them. I guess that second chance doesn't count in our community. So what happens? They go back to doing the same thing they did to get put in jail in the first time, which continues that revolving door into the prison business. And that's what it is, a business. And guess what? We're some of their biggest clients. So let me show you what the past and present mainstream solution is for this. Complaining to the government and guilting companies to diversify. Complaining to the government and guilting companies to diversify. So how's this working for us? Is it working? Of course not. I just showed you the stats. It's not working, right? And complaining to the government does nothing. We got to go a whole lot further than that. Guilting companies to diversify. Now that word diversify, diversity, that's the key word these days. Everybody's using diversity. Brothers and sisters, it's 2016 and we still talking about diversity? Really? That's the solution? Come on, that's not the solution. Here's the real solution. 3UFIRST will invest in and create companies that make products and services we use every day and expand from there. Examples: food, toothpaste, soap, detergent, dishwashing liquid, lotion, deodorant, etc. Shouldn't this be where we create the jobs for our community instead of waiting for other communities to create jobs for us? Next, funding the best programs across the country in health, re-education. Now that re-education is very important, brothers and sisters. Why? Because we've been following a 400-year plan that our ancestors had no choice to follow because they were slaves, yet we still following them to this day. That's why that re-education is very important. We need to be re-educated and reprogrammed. Sports, arts, business, etc. Problem: not enough money to expand and fund our best programs. So let's look and see what the past and present mainstream solution is for this. Begging for money from the government and other philanthropists in and outside our community. How's that working for us? Is that really working? Of course it's not working. Anytime you got to beg somebody for something, it's not working. So here's the real solution. 3UFIRST will have a funding plan in place where nonprofits can simply fill out a form and based on the criteria will receive the money. After all, these programs are for our community, right? So shouldn't we be funding programs for our community? Examples of criteria: impact, cost, and outcome. Simple, makes sense, right? Next, sponsoring. Juneteenth, Black History Month, Black Film Festival. These are some of our biggest events we have every single year. Every single year. Yet we still have problems finding sponsors to sponsor our events. Now, let's look at what the past and present mainstream solution is for this. Hunting to find companies and organizations and begging them to sponsor our event. Look at that word begging again. Brothers and sisters, we shouldn't have to beg. That's not coming from a place of power. And we have power. We just not using it. We using it to help every other community. We got $1 trillion flowing through our pockets every single year. And we still have to beg people to sponsor our events? Really? No, brothers and sisters. So here's the real solution. 3UFIRST will sponsor major cultural events across the country and then branch out to the smaller ones. Doesn't that make more sense to have one of our companies sponsor our events? Simple. Next, donating 50% of net profits. Problem: Black business accountability to our community. Watch out. Causes some controversy. Don't be mentioning that. Yeah, we should mention it. We should hold our Black businesses accountable, right? Okay. So let's look at the past and present mainstream solution for this. Accepting without any accountability that our Black businesses are contributing to our community. That's the solution, huh? Well, look, first of all, let me make myself clear. I'm not talking about Black businesses not giving back. Of course they're giving back because they're creating jobs in our community, right? Hopefully, right? What I'm talking about is after that. What are they doing for our community after that? So here's the real solution. 3UFIRST was created specifically. Let me say that again. 3UFIRST was created specifically to solve the major problems in our community. So as far as accountability, it's built in. It's what it was created to do. Isn't that a big difference? So what I'm trying to show you is the difference between any other Black company and 3UFIRST. I'm trying to give you an incentive, a reason to support 3UFIRST. Next, building wealth, no longer being just consumers. Problem: y'all know we lost half our wealth in this so-called Great Recession. I call it so-called because I actually think we're in a depression, especially in our community, right? It's just not as bad as it was in the late 20s and mid-30s, but we're in a depression. Why? Because our main investment was in our homes. And of course, we saw what happened to that with the subprime loans and the foreclosures and the lost jobs and the lost property value, etc. So let's look at what the past and present mainstream solution. Let's see what their solution is for this. Solve this problem. Investing in our homes and 401k retirement accounts. Okay, for some people that has worked. I'm not going to say it hasn't worked, but for some people it has worked. But remember, I just showed you the past slide. People lost property values, they lost their homes, they lost their money in their 401k accounts, right? So that's not really the solution. Here's the other solution they have, mainstream. Investing in mainstream company stocks. Okay, that kind of makes sense. You know, since we buying their products, it only makes sense for us to invest in companies whose products we buy, right? Wrong again. Remember, these are the same companies that won't hire us, and when they do hire us, they pay us less than their white counterparts for doing the same job. That's not the solution. Here's the solution. Investing in companies that create jobs and services and products in your community. Doesn't that make more sense? Why would we want to continue to invest in a company that won't hire us, and then if they do hire us, pay us less than our white counterparts? Why would we do that? This is the solution, brothers and sisters. That's the real solution. Next. Business and investment opportunities. Problem. Where to invest? Where it creates jobs, services, and products that benefit our community. Are they readily available? Have you done the due diligence? So here's a past and present mainstream solution for this. Continue to invest outside your community. Don't worry about it. Individually, you'll benefit, right? And then eventually it may trickle down into our community, right? Someone once said a sign of insanity is doing the same thing but expecting a different result. Brothers and sisters, this is our main problem right here. We can't keep following a 400-year plan that has not worked and never worked, right? Our ancestors were slaves, so they had to follow that plan. 400 years later, we still following the same plan? Come on. That don't make no sense. So here's the real solution. 3UFIRST will offer business and investment opportunities that benefit you and your community. Doesn't that make more sense? Examples: food production, clothing, education, tax and legal plans, insurance companies, banks, TV movie studios, radio stations, real estate, hotels, resorts, investing in the Caribbean and Africa, hospitals, sports teams, etc. Shouldn't we be investing in companies that invest in us, they put back in our community? Shouldn't we invest in our companies? Doesn't that make more sense? Now, I can take each one of these areas and tell you exactly why we need them. Let's take education. Y'all have heard the stories about how our children are treated different from other children, how they're penalized for doing the same thing any other child would do, or how they're going from school and getting tickets, all kinds of crazy stuff. And then you hear about the stories about our children graduating and can barely read. No, brothers and sisters, we need our own schools so we can build a foundation that they can build on, so we can prepare them, we can teach them their history, their culture, their language. Yes, we do need to speak our own language, right? So when they leave our schools, they're prepared to go anywhere else and be successful. That's why we need our own education. We need our own schools. Let's take TV movie studios. Once again, y'all have heard the stories about how hard it is for Hollywood to greenlight our pictures, our productions, right? We got to wait for them to greenlight something that we want to produce for our community. Does that make sense? When we could have our own TV movie studios and greenlight everything we want. Doesn't that make more sense? Instead of waiting for somebody else to greenlight it, we can greenlight it ourselves. Let's take hotels. Now, every single year, you have black organizations, black associations, they have their conferences or their conventions, right? So they stay in these hotels. But let me ask you, how do these hotels benefit our community? They don't. But if we own the hotel, that's much more benefits. You're talking about investment opportunities, job creation. And guess what? We can bring some of that outside money back to our community. Doesn't that make more sense? Let's take hospitals. Once again, y'all have heard the stories about how different we're treated. When it comes to pain medication, like they don't want to give us the proper amount of pain medication, like as if we're different. We feel pain differently. That's crazy. Or how they talk down to us like we're children. Long waiting lines. We don't need this, brothers and sisters. We have our own. We don't need to wait. We won't have these problems. You see what I'm saying? Brothers and sisters, this is what we need to be investing in. Not some outside company that won't hire us. And when they do, they pay us less than their white counterparts. No, we need to be investing in this, right? Our companies for our community and generating revenues from outside our community. Doesn't that make more sense? So here's what we have in place now. Right now we have a website where you can search and shop for the same name brand products and services you normally need, you normally use. But wait a minute. Didn't he say let's do something different? I did say that. But brothers and sisters, where are we spending that $1 trillion every year? We still spending it outside our community. So this way we can bring some of that money back. We can bring some of that money back and use that money to create those other opportunities for our community, right? We also have a black business page where you can buy black products. And we'll continue to expand on that by way of either partnering or creating our own products and services. We also have an articles, videos, and tips page. And we created that page basically to inform you, educate you, to keep you, hopefully to make your lives better. Now, here's what we want in place. We don't have this in place yet. We'll have in place a business opportunity where you can save, raise, or make money by simply shopping on 3UFIRST.com and telling everybody else to do the same thing. Real simple, brothers and sisters. This is not rocket science. This is what we need to do. We'll also have an opportunity where you can invest in 3UFIRST and the other companies that we create. This way, when 3UFIRST continues to grow, so does our community's wealth. Doesn't that make more sense? Building wealth in our community? So what to do next? Well, I showed you what 3UFIRST can do for you, your family, and our community. Here's what you can do. Make a small donation, $10, $20. If you can afford more, that's fine. But we want to do this on a mass level, mass scale, right? So we felt $10, $20 was realistic, was doable, right? Next, start searching and shopping on 3UFIRST.com. That's the only thing, that's the only way things are going to change. We have to do something different, right? In order to get a different result. Lastly, tell your friends and family what 3UFIRST can do for our community, what it was created to do. What would our great leaders say about what's happening in our community today? What would Malcolm, King, and Garvey say? We celebrate them every single year, but we don't practice what they preach. They preach black economics, right? So did they die in vain? No, they didn't. Not on my watch, not as long as I'm alive, and I believe y'all feel the same way. But brothers and sisters, we can't keep following the 400-year plan that hasn't worked and never will work. We got to do something different, right? The plan. Now, when I wrote Black Unity, the Total Solution to Financial Independence and Happiness, I wrote it as a guide, as a blueprint to help us create our own opportunities, to help us solve our own problems, right? So if you want more details, you'll get the book. You want more details about 3UFIRST, you want more details about me, the book is paperback $18, digital $3, so you have a choice. Tips. Now, I always like to give tips as a thank you and as a way of hopefully making your lives better. So here are two: how to pay off your bills in the shortest period of time. So let me give you an example. Say you have 3 credit card bills, one for $1,000, one for $500, and one for $100. Which one do you pay off first? Well, if you want to pay your bills off in the shortest period of time, you want to pay that $100 off first. So what you do is you pay the minimum on the $1,000, the minimum on the $500, and you put the rest of that on the $100. And that's how you'll pay that $100 bill off. Then you take the $500, you pay the minimum on the $1,000, and you take what you were paying on the $100 and you add it to the $500. And that's how you'll pay that off in the shortest period of time. Then you take what you were paying on the $100 and the $500 and you put that on the $1,000, and that's how you pay your bills off in the shortest period of time. Now, I don't know if you noticed, you didn't use any extra money. You used the same money you were using to pay your earlier bills. So if you have any extra money, you'll be able to pay your bills off even faster. Now, this is very important, brothers and sisters. This is very important. Very important. Do what you fear and watch it disappear. Let me say that again. Do what you fear and watch it disappear. What does that mean? That means the fear is not in doing it, because once you've done it, it's done, right? The fear is in thinking about doing it. Isn't that deep? So be careful with your thoughts. Be careful how you think, because that fear can stop you from taking that next step to success or achieving your goals. So do like Nike says, just do it. Just do it. And here's what you find. When you take that next step, you'll realize that fear wasn't even real. It was just a thought. That's all it was, just a thought. Change. Brothers and sisters, I'm gonna be straight up with y'all. Change is not gonna come from the top. It's not gonna come from the top. It's gonna come from the middle and the bottom. Why? Well, if you're at the top, what do you want to change, right? Everything's going fine. You're doing well. So guess what? You don't want anything to change. And to be honest, that's why we haven't made as much progress as a community as we should, because we're relying on people at the top. They don't want nothing to change. So change has to come from the middle and the bottom. Because if you're in the middle and the bottom and you're struggling, you want things to change with a quickness. So brothers and sisters, like that saying goes, we have to be that change. And people will follow that change. But we have to be that change. Conclusion. We're almost done. I'm not half-stepping. This is straight talk, no fluff. Everybody raise your hands. Hold your hand up. How easy is it to spread your fingers? Pretty easy, right? They're already spread, right? Now make a fist. How easy is it to spread your fingers now? A lot harder, right? Well, brothers and sisters, we have to be that fist. Right now we're like this, but we have to become this. This is real power. This is what black power means. But brothers and sisters, you can't have black power without black unity, right? So this is where we have to be. We have to come together. Now, let's talk about choices. We still have a choice. We can follow that. We can continue to follow that 400-year plan that hasn't worked and never will, based on what our ancestors had to go through because they were slaves. And we still follow the 400-year plan, and we're supposed to be free. We can continue that plan to follow that, or we can begin to bring billions back to our community to solve our problems. Doesn't that make more sense? So you have a choice, brothers and sisters. Real black wealth. Now, when I put this slide together, I was going to have images of successful black people in different areas and stuff. But then I said to myself, that's not real black wealth. Real black wealth is when you can create jobs in your community. That's real black wealth. Real black wealth is when you can create business and investment opportunities in your community. That's real black wealth. Real black wealth is when you can donate 50% of your net profits back into your community. That's real black wealth. Real black wealth is when you can build wealth in your community. That's real black wealth. Real black wealth is when you can sponsor events in your community. That's real black wealth. Real black wealth is when you can fund the best programs across the country, solving the other problems in our community without any outside help. That's real black wealth, and that's what 3UFIRST was created to do. Now, let me talk about accountability. Remember we talked about accountability, holding our black businesses accountable? Well, guess what? Guess who else we need to hold accountable? Ourselves. We need to hold ourselves accountable. Why? Because, brothers and sisters, we can't keep doing the same thing but expecting a different result. In order to get a different result, you have to do something different. We can't keep following a 400-year plan that hasn't worked and never will work. A plan that our ancestors had no choice to follow because they were slaves, yet we still following today. We're supposed to be free. Let me be more specific. We can't keep spending $1 trillion of our hard-earned money every single year in every community but our own, helping other communities solve their problems while we're still dealing with ours. Does that make sense? No, brothers and sisters. 3UFIRST was created for us to solve our problems. Right? So, brothers and sisters, we almost done. I want to say one more thing. It's time to stop talking about our problems and start solving our problems. Thank you. Now, for those of you who are going to be watching this online, if you have any questions, go to 3UFIRST.com and go to the About Us page or go to the Frequently Asked Question page. And if your questions aren't answered there, then go to our 3UFIRST Facebook page and we'll answer your questions. I want to thank you again.